push forth the economic vehicle. A pleasure to have you with us. We're not going to say we wrapped up an African Union summit, but more importantly, the question that addresses itself is, can we put aside our differences that have been created by elements, to push forth this continent? Because as we were saying earlier, it's a very, very rich continent, yet it is very poor.
Okay, first we can go flashback to the African-Egyptian relation from the age of Abdel Nasser. When he go and put his interest to African countries, especially Ethiopia, in the beginning of struggle between Egypt and Israel, and when the Mossad start to play in Ethiopia, to make some problems to Egypt from the side of the River Nile. After Abdel Nasser, Egypt neglect the relations between Egypt and Africa so much for more than 40 years. Then we return back when President Sisi take his position as President of Egypt to return back to Africa. Africa, as you said, has very rich countries, many resources, more than water, agriculture.
Lots of minerals.
I
mean, lots of natural resources.
Okay, that's why.
And labor.
Yes, and human resources.
Exactly.
Human resources. Very cheap workers, very strong. So when President Sisi tried to make his interest to the relations to Africa, he started to think away from Alexandria to Cape Town. He started to think in a project to make a conjunction between Lake of Victoria to the Red Sea, which mean very, very important subject to Egypt. Many resources, many facilities to transportation through the Nile or through the sea, and important to the logistic area in Canal Suez. So when he went to Ethiopia, he made 2 meetings with Omar Bashir and with the vice president of Ethiopia. He said that the main sources of Nile is very important to Egypt. We have a deal about the water, so we can't take any changes in this agreement. President Sisi, before he traveled to Ethiopia, he attended the IAS conference in Aswan, and one of the main elements of this summit is to invest in young people, in YAS too. So he tried to put some interest in YAS people in Egypt and Africa, and make many relations between YASs all over Africans.
The political potentiality of this conference, do you think that a summit or the African Union conference, can it put aside the differences? Can it move us and maybe make us see eye to eye on a lot of threatening issues like terrorism, for example, in this continent?
Yes. We know that Egypt suffers from terrorists in Sinai. Africa, Boko Haram in Nigeria.
Exactly, we have a lot of terrorist spots.
Many conflicts in Africa, like Gambia and Yahya Malik, who just leave his position after many troops of many countries try to force him to leave his position. So African suffers from terrorism like Egypt exactly. So we, President Sisi and all presidents in Africa try to put a cooperated way between Egypt and Africa to face the terrorism all over these countries. So it's very important because the source of terrorism is one source: Muslim Brotherhood all over the world. The one who made Boko Haram is a member of Muslim Brotherhood. Beit al-Maqdis in Sinai, Muslim Brotherhood. So all terrorism in Africa, or Islamic terrorism in Africa, is from the main source is Muslim Brotherhood. So we cooperate together to face this terrorism, to make a strategy between Egypt and Africa to face these groups, to try to invest without terrorism.
What do you think is the most tangible thing that you would say came out of a conference like the African Union Summit? What is the positive result?
The positive result is first, Morocco returned back to Africa, the African Summit. The second result is meaning some deals with some countries like Ethiopia, like Sudan, in investing in agriculture, in animals, okay. Some investments in trading. If we succeeded to make the way or the route from Alexandria to Cape Town, it means that all Africans are belong to one way. So we can make easy to transportation, to trade together without any difficulties.
Critical issues like, for example, the Palestinian question, the situation in Libya, the situation in Sudan. Do you think summits like this can push forth this cause?
That's why President Sisi make a meeting with Omar Bashir to discuss the problem in Sudan, Darfur. About Libya, you know that Libya have many countries in their sites, Chad, Niger. So we must, all countries beside Libya, try to prevent weapons to enter Libya. It will be by making a deal between Egypt, Niger, Chad, Algeria, Morocco, all countries which besides Libya. That's why we can face the terrorism in Libya, Libya and Sudan. Yes. Okay, but I think this summit didn't discuss the Palestinian issues in details because Palestine is not in Africa, so it's not. It's just a hint on it. Not more.
Talking about critical issues and security in this region, can we come up with some kind of a formula to guarantee joint security?
I think one of the main points which must discussed in this conference to make Union troop to face terrorism in Africa, like what happened in Gambia, which the troops from Senegal and many countries try to force Yahya Jammeh to leave his position. So this summit must concentrate on making, as the President Sisi said before, we make an Arab united troop to face terrorism. It make in Africa.
Work.
Yeah. And it will not be work. Okay, it's related to all Arab bosses want to be the only boss of anything. So
when I raised the question of the Palestinian question, it's because it's a question that is really hurting this region and maybe the world's stability. So long as this question is not resolved, nothing will happen. Now we see more countries standing behind Palestine. The United Nations issued a resolution against Palestinian Israeli atrocities and the settlement building. Do you think maybe we can get the African countries to unite with each other in organizations like the UN to make sure that it is not just ink on paper, but maybe it is pushed forth into some kind of an action being taken against Israel and its atrocity in Palestine, against the formation or countries that support and fund and harbor the terrorist, Islamic terrorist factions that are harming not only this region but the world at large. Can we really get something tangible, sanctions, what have you?
First, to talk about Palestinian issue, we must be united Palestinians itself, Hamas and Fatah. We can solve the Palestinian issues without this united, make a united between Hamas and Fatah. It will not happen. It will not happen. But all African countries can push the UN to make some decisions against Israel.
Can we take sanctions? Because a resolution has been issued. It has to be followed up with something.
Yeah, but the main problem of the Palestinian issues is finding two main unity.
Well, the main thing is Fatah. I mean,
I know.
We want, as Arabs, want to see them united, but the official entity is Fatah.
It's Fatah. I know that. But I can say something. Hamas belongs to Mossad. It's from the history. Hamas belongs to the Mossad. Okay, it's history. It's history. The meetings between the leaders of Hamas with Mossad members, Kenyans in Qatar, it has existed in all American newspapers.
Well,
okay,
this is not information that I know.
So the Arab countries can push Fatah to make a deal between Fatah and Israel, or Palestine and Israel, can push UN to make some decisions against Israel, using force against Palestinian people. But I think the African countries can play a very big role than Arab countries.
If we talk about an issue like the water issue, which is a critical issue for all of us here in this continent, can we resolve our differences and work together? Because really the Nile is a lifeline for all of us.
President Sisi says that point in Aswan, in the summit of Yas. He said that the river Nile is a red line. He can't reduce 1 meter from our Nile. Okay, so one of the main meetings with Prime Minister of Ethiopia is to discussing this point. President Sisi assured that the deals or the agreements which signed between Egypt and Ethiopia must be settled. We can't change any point in it. And one of the news that published about the summit, that Prime Minister of Ethiopia said that we will not fill the lake of dam without returning back to Egypt. It's a very good point that we have a site between us and Ethiopia in the problem of Nile.
Dr. Mohamed, do you think that we can put aside our differences and move forward? Have we realized, especially after the alleged Arab Spring and what have you, that really there is a war that is being shed on this part of the world, not only the Arab region, but even the African continent? Can we put our differences aside and work together? Do you think summits like this will help us to really realize that we have to unite?
Sure. All countries who faces from terrorism, who faces from...
which are a lot in this region, in this continent.
Yeah. Who faces from Arab Spring, Tunisia. It started in Algeria, but it's finished. So all African countries must deal together to face this wars. As you said, it's not an Arab Spring or African Spring. It's a war. It's a war want to divide all countries to many countries again, to stole the treasures of these countries, like what have done in Iraq, stolen the petrol, what have done in Libya, stole the petrol and the gold. So
there are lots of
things.
We've been blessed with a lot of resources.
Yeah. So it is not a spring, it's not a revolution. It is just a war to steal the treasures of these countries. This summit put equal sides with all countries' leaders to face these wars. If we succeeded to face the terrorism together, not alone, and we must say that Egypt is the only country all over the world who faces terrorism itself without any aid from any other country. But if we have an aid from...
And is paying a very heavy bill for fighting terrorist organizations.
Many sacrifices.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But if we have a deal, if we have a side with some countries, some aside countries to face the terrorism, if Palestine prevent the terrorists from coming from Palestine to Sinai, if Libya succeeded to prevent the terrorists from coming from Libya equal to Sudan, so we can work together to face the terrorism and finish the terrorism from all over.
Well, we're going to finish it anyway, whether people cooperate or not. I mean, it's been...
we will succeed.
There's no negotiation, especially in Sinai. I don't think we're negotiating the issue.
Yes. We insist to finish the terrorists in Sinai. We succeeded, but as you said, with a very,
we're paying a heavy bill.
Yeah.
We're paying a very, very heavy bill.
Yeah.
What message would you be directing to our young people in terms of there is a lot of potential in this continent? When I say young people, I'm not talking just about Egyptians, but I'm talking about the African young generation. Because unfortunately, as you were saying, we haven't been cooperating with within intra-African cooperation has been very weak for the past 40 years or so, which means that you have generations really that have not been taught the importance of really...
I will say something. I see it every year in Europe. A very big summit to in all over European countries. Meeting, very big meeting. Why I invite President Sisi and all leaders, all African leaders, to make a summit to youths all over African countries every year. If we succeeded to make it. To united African young people, to make meetings between us every month in one country, so we can make a very unequal unity site towards the African problems, and we can use the human resources in all African countries with the very best way.
Dr. Mohamed El Ezaby, thank you very much for your fruitful input. It is a rich continent, which is why a lot of eyes are focusing and a lot of hands are meddling. But I think that every day awareness is increasing more and people are becoming more and more possessive and protective of their natural resources. And on that note, I wish you a very pleasant evening. We'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night. Thank you very much.